Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Well, coming out of the COVID pandemic lockdowns, we've seen more than ever the power of parents, particularly moms who are speaking out and standing up for their kids. We've seen everyday moms and dads speak up at school board meetings, take on the powerful teachers' unions, and even run for office in order to fight for their kids to have a quality education environment, only to be demoralized and demonized by many on the left as terrorists and extremists. Well, today we're blessed to have one of those unafraid moms with us here who went directly into the lion's den to take on MSNBC's chief misinformation officer, Joy Reid. We'll get into all of that in a moment, but I want to talk to you first about American financing. A lot of us are struggling to keep up with our everyday bills. Everything is still really expensive. But if you own a home, I want you to call my friends at American Financing. Interest rates have dropped into the fives, the lowest they've been in a long time, and they're saving customers an average of $854 a month by tapping into their home's equity and wiping out that high-interest credit card debt. $854 a month is like a $10,000 raise. Credit card interest rates are insane, and most of us are actually still carrying a balance from the holidays. So call American Financing and take care of that today. If you call today, you may not have to make February's mortgage payment. Call today, 866-890-9313. That's 866-890-9313. AmericanFinancing.net, NMLS 182334, NMLS consumeraccess.org. APR rates in the fives, they start at 6.406% for well-qualified borrowers. Call today. It's 866-890-9313 for details about credit costs and terms. Now let's welcome in Tiffany Justice to the podcast. Tiffany is the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on today, Tudor. It's nice to see you again.
It is good to see you too. And thank you for what you did with Joy Reid on MSNBC. Not many people are willing to do that. And I want to play a few clips from there. First off, I think this is interesting because there is this real narrative out there on the left that anybody who fights against porn in schools is banning books. So listen to this exchange and then we're going to talk about it.
The books that are being banned, I want to give you just
hold on a second. Well, no, Joy, but I want to be clear. No one's banning books. We're talking about a public school library. Children don't have unfettered access to the internet at school. And the subject matter in the books that moms are concerned about are the same things that kids don't have access to on the internet.
People aren't banning books. I think it's funny because I'm old enough to remember when it was actually the left banning books, truly banning pieces of award-winning literature in schools. And now they're trying to say, oh, you're banning books. You're talking about a book that is glorifying rape, that is glorifying incest. And she doesn't want to talk about that, but that's really what you're saying. I don't want this in my school, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, 90% of Americans don't want this type of content in our schools, in our public schools. It's so concerning, Tudor, when you look at the literacy rates across the country, right? Only a third of kids reading on grade level in fourth grade across America. I was interviewing with Joy in New York City, where only a quarter of kids are reading on grade level, 11% of Black students. And somehow she wanted to have some conversation about, I said, what about the fact that kids can't read the books? Right? What about the fact that you're lumping together? She had an argument, Tudor, where she was talking a little bit about Black students and Hispanic students and Hispanic families and then families of children who have suffered sexual assault. And I said, how do you lump all of these people together? It was a very interesting conversation to have with her. But like most, honestly, Marxists that you engage with, they're not interested in a real dialogue. It's really just they're trying to further their agenda, and you are sitting there trying to debunk their ridiculous claims.
Oh, it's funny because we talked about the fact that they called parents terrorists. She accuses you of cherry picking from the book, which is so funny to me because it's like, well, wait a minute. If you can cherry pick from a book, then isn't that a problem as it is? Let's listen to this clip really quickly. and then I want to talk about
can do keyword searches and find certain keywords.
Like rape?
You can find sure.
Or anal rape or dildo.
And so what you find is the keywords that you find, the N-word, anything, words like you just used, when you'll get out of context passages from the book. And then based on that, Moms for Liberty members are going to places like Broward County School Board meetings, reading out of context passages from these books, and then demanding that the school board remove them.
So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm going to answer
Please
for
do.
you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? That's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
These are not out of context passages. I take exception to that because this is the author telling his story of having been raped as a child by a family member. So this is a story of incest as a preteen that then leads this person down a path of going to become trans, which I think is, for the average adult reads the story and says, wow, this really caused this young man a lot of issues, lifelong issues that were never dealt with. And they're saying you're taking an out of context passage of a book that is glorifying rape and then glorifying the after effects of mental illness that comes from that.
Yeah, and to be honest, Tudor, what we know, Dr. Quentin Van Meter, who's an endocrinologist who's worked in this space of gender ideology for some time, has been talking recently about the high instance of children that are presenting as non-binary or transgender, and the fact that many of them have been victims of sexual assault. So you bring up a really good point here. My point to Joy was this: if a child, she said, what if a child can be seen by this book? I don't know if you're going to show that clip, but she talks about, who are you to take away the opportunity for this child to be seen? And if you're watching the interview, you can see that I'm like shocked she says it, because if a child, and my answer back to her was, if a child feels seen by this book, that means they've been the victim of a predator.
Right.
I mean, and we should do a lot better, in our public school system. For heaven's sakes, we're having the wrong conversation if this many kids are being sexually assaulted by adults. What a luxury conversation to talk about books in libraries, right?
And at what point do we want a child to be dealing with that on their own, to read a book and go, oh gosh, that happened to me, so this must be my story? And I think that something you just said is very key, because there have been studies that have shown that young people who have been raped, and let's be honest, this was a little boy who was raped by a male cousin who was an adult male. So this is a boy who was raped by a male. And oftentimes there is a confusion by these young people because they don't understand, well, why did this happen to me? Am I gay? Did I enjoy this? There's all of those questions that go through. And obviously those questions happen whether you are raped by a man or you are raped by a woman or whatever the sexual assault is. But the questions are there not to be read in a book and be told then, okay, this happened to me. I'm not going to talk to an adult. I'm not going to have any type of intervention. There's not going to be a legal discussion here. We're going to, as the school, step in and guide your child toward a transition. What the heck?
Yeah, and there are many psychologists that'll tell you that can be re-traumatizing for someone who has been the victim of sexual assault to read about an assault in that manner. We're talking about some very serious stuff here. So my point was this: we should be doing a lot better than throwing a book on a library shelf and hoping that a child stumbles upon something that would be life-saving, according to Ali Velshi, who spoke after I was on. Susan Del Percio and Ali Velshi came in, and there was like this tag team, 3 of them, that decided they were all going to talk about how stupid I was. And so I got to watch that, where Ali Velshi says, well, kids know about sex. Kids have always known about sex. My argument back there is kids know about a lot of stuff. They know about marijuana. Should we give that to them in school? I mean, honestly, we're talking about our public schools, and, we should be having better conversations, Tudor, about what should be happening inside those schools, what books the kids should be reading, the fact that so many of the kids can't read, but we're graduating them from high school. And, the reason why I went on Joy Reid was to talk about these really important things. And if I have to get through this ridiculous book banning myth to get to that bigger conversation, I'm willing to do that.
Well, my question is, why does Joy Reid so desperately want this book in a child's library? And I asked that question because this is something obviously we talked about a lot in the campaign here in Michigan. If I were to go to the bus stop and read passages from this book, I would be arrested.
Yep.
If I can be arrested for reading a pornographic book to children at the bus stop, why should somebody be allowed to read it to my child at school, or why should my child have access to it at the school?
100%. And, I don't know if you'll show, there's another part of the episode where she asks me like what expertise we have. And I was like, you don't
that's right.
need
Yeah.
an expert to know that dildos aren't okay for public school. I mean, I'm just sitting there, Tudor, like, are you kidding me? Like, honestly, are we actually having this conversation? Because there is no context where sex toys are okay for public school. And this idea and this conflict, yes, of course. No one has an issue with reproductive biology. It's just like drag queens. No one had an issue with the drag queens when they were at the drag bar. It's when you come into the kindergarten classroom that we begin to have a problem, right? And so, yes, conversations about reproductive biology in school, Moms for Liberty is all for it. Let's give kids honest information about biology, like there are men and there are women. Right? More of that should be happening. But this idea that somehow we need to be telling kids in kindergarten that maybe they were born in the wrong body is absolutely ridiculous. And kids don't need, help getting onto sex sites or learning how to use sex toys. It's just
and she keeps saying to you, the part about obviously that you're not an expert, but why should you get the choice to decide for the other mom next to you that this book shouldn't be in the school? And I'm like, whoa, how are we even at the point where we're having this discussion where it's like these books are these kids? I mean, I have two 10-year-olds, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. So right in the age group of these books that would be available to these kids. And I'm like, what parent do I know that is like, yeah, well, we provide porn at home for the kids just so they can learn about it. They should read in depth about the strap-on dildo, the oral sex, anal sex, all of these things. No, absolutely not. And I'm like, I think a parent has to explain, first of all, what are they doing at their house that they would allow this? And secondly, if you're so desperate for your child to read this, I mean, there are other books that aren't in school. Go get it. There's a Barnes and Noble up the street. Amazon delivers right to your house. If you're so desperate for your kid to have this book, go get it. But no, I don't think that there's any problem with parents saying anything with pornographic material. We're not talking about sex ed. We're not talking about learning how babies are made. We're
Right.
talking about disgusting, illegal sex. Illegal is the key word there. This is illegal what's happening in these books.
But that's the point, Tudor. Like, so let's have that conversation, because I think that's where we haven't really spoken about this yet. In America, we have all agreed on age appropriate content. I have 4 kids too. There are a lot of things I do with my husband that I don't do in front of my kids, right? We all know that there's a difference between adults and children. We've all collectively understood that to be. And so what we have to understand is, Joy opened up the segment talking about, this culture war. It's not a culture war. It's a revolution. They have foisted a revolution on us, and the school is one of the battlegrounds where we need to fight, because they are coming for our kids. And honestly, it doesn't matter what we do in America. You can close the border, you can do a lot of things, but if they get our kids and this next generation of children and they turn them against us, nothing else matters. You can close the border, but our kids are against us. And so the truth is that there is this blurring of the boundary between adult and child. We see it all the time, right? In everything, there's this question. We're treating adults like kids and kids like adults. And if you don't have kids, maybe you don't know how kids think, but as a mom of 4, you certainly do. I do. They're not little adults. Their brains work very differently, right? They think about things differently. They reason differently. They're not even supposed to, in between the ages of potty training and puberty, it's called the latency period. And there's a time where kids aren't sexual at all in any capacity. And that's important time for them to develop. And we're invading that time with all of this highly sexualized content. And so, that's what, as moms, I want to talk about, right? Like, how did adults forget that kids are not adults?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We, during the campaign, obviously, this was a conversation that we had quite often. And we had a press conference with a lot of moms in the state, because our moms were seeing this. We obviously in Michigan have some far left school districts. Gretchen Whitmer is in bed with the teachers' unions. She wants to make sure they can do whatever they want. And so we saw this. We were seeing this to the level of the superintendent of schools, our state superintendent, is defending this stuff in the schools. We're calling on and him to resign. We're saying this is a big problem. We're at a press conference and we have one of the reporters, this young, naive, I say naive, but I think very dangerous reporter, who's like, I mean, can you explain what you're saying porn is? And it's almost comical because you're like, are you kidding me? And I look at her, I'm like, do you want me to send you some of the porn that we're seeing? And that was like everything blew up. Gubernatorial candidate offers to send porn.
Right.
You are joking me right now that you are going to try to belittle what mom is saying about her own child, what dad is saying about his own child. And this was not something that we were just seeing in northern Michigan or western Michigan. This is something we're seeing on the east side, where we're seeing families of Muslim descent in Muslim practices who are saying, what the heck? You're not bringing this into my kid's life. This is not something that is a small issue. This is something that we're seeing across all walks of life, where people are like, I get to choose this. But what the heck? Like, why are we even having this conversation? Why aren't you teaching reading, writing, and math?
Right. But I think what you said two things that were really important right there. First of all, you said Gretchen Whitmer gave the teachers unions carte blanche to do whatever they wanted. The teachers unions run the Democratic Party. I have come to understand that they run the Democratic Party. They are the foot soldiers of the left. They are the money makers of the left. They have a money laundering situation where they are running government money through the schools into the teachers union, back to the Democratic Party. We see it over and over and over. So first of all, let's just get that straight, right? And I don't believe that the majority of teachers in America align with the policies of the teachers unions. And we need to do a better job of showing those policies of the teachers unions and the elites, and showing teachers how far away the teachers unions actually are from wanting to help kids in classrooms. That's the first thing. The second thing you said was the thing about the reporter. You said naive, but she's dangerous. My friend, James Lindsay, is on our advisory board for Moms for Liberty. I don't know if you know him. You can follow him on Twitter, Conceptual James. But James, Megyn Kelly made a comment and said, talking about Joy Reid, and she said, this idiot thinks blah, blah, blah. And James said, oh, no, not an idiot, a Harvard-trained Marxist propagandist.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the truth. That reporter is not naive. These people are not naive. They know exactly what they are doing. They want to put us into impossible positions so they can constantly move themselves to the left. And we are done with it, right? So how do you engage with a Marxist? Just like I did with Joy Reid. You go in there, you're honest, you're straightforward. I wanted people to understand what Moms for Liberty was about, but I wasn't going to let her set the premise, especially at the beginning, about this idea that we're banning books, right? And so we just need more conversations, Tudor, where we can actually go up against these people and show America who they really are, because 90% of Americans are with us. It's just when Joy says things like, don't you want every child to be seen? What kind of a monster are you, Tiffany Justice, right? What kind of a racist are you? I kept saying, Joy, we want all children to be taught African-American history. Ruby Bridges was an American hero. Oh, and by the way, parents are the best expert for their own children. And that's the truth. But during COVID, I mean, you guys were locked down, tighter than anybody. I mean, it was really California, New York, Michigan, Illinois. Gretchen Whitmer was like, Cruella de Vil. I don't even know what to say about that woman. I mean, she knew better than everybody. And, my question back is, what's your expertise? Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that is a valid point, because they're out there saying you have no expertise. I mean, I think as parents, we all feel like, wait a minute, I know what's acceptable for my child. And I can generalize and say that for the most part, anybody who is seeing something illegal, some crime happen to a kid, that's something that we want to discuss outside of that suddenly being foisted upon them at school and me not knowing. I mean, imagine my child coming home and saying, is it normal that older cousin comes over and does this? Is this okay? Because that wasn't seen as like this horrendous experience, It wasn't played up as this is not right. This is illegal. This is something that can't happen in your life. And if it does happen, I mean, being seen as something different, because that would be, hey, you've had a trauma. This is what happened to you. Notice in this book, this person then contacted the authorities, went through the right channels, got the help they needed. No, That's not what this book is about. So you make a very valid point. This is not how I want my child to be seen if they go through a trauma. I want them to come to me. I want to know that this happened. I don't want them to hide it and then years later be like, you know what, this isn't my body anymore. We had Chloe Cole on here a few weeks ago. And I think something that she talked about, she said she had gone through a sexual assault, and that kind of contributed to wanting to get rid of her breasts. You know, it's like, I don't want anybody touching that again. Look, these things, when kids go through trauma, there are lifelong effects. The idea that a Joy Reid is out there saying, just let them read this book and then let them go on their own and have no adult interaction with them, that's sick.
Yeah, I mean, I know Chloe quite well. It's a tragic story. Honestly, it's heartbreaking to hear what she went through and the decisions that she made. And, that's the thing, Tudor. So when we look at what's happening in the public schools, there are private conversations happening between adults, teachers, guidance counselors, and kids. These kids are having what really is an identity crisis, right? They're being told they're born in the wrong body. They think somehow they're broken. They think if, whatever's wrong with them, they can fix by, magically changing their biological sex, which you and I know is absolutely impossible. But, here your child is in crisis and the school is telling them, oh, this is where you're safe. You can have a chosen family. The audacity of the state to think that they know better than our kids, for the default position to be this parent could be dangerous, and so we have to protect every child, is a ridiculous argument. That's a ridiculous thing to say. And these are government schools that we're dealing with. So there are some really serious things that are happening in these government schools. There's a wedge being driven between parents and children, and parents feel it. I think they just inherently, you just know, right? This is too much. You're pushing too much into my life. And so the question I would have asked Joy last night on Friday night, if I had the chance, was really like, what's your line, Joy? Like, what is it going to be for you that's going to be too far, that another adult is going to infringe on your parental rights? Because I promise every parent has a line. That's
true,
children, right?
Well, absolutely. And would you be okay with what happened in this book happening to your child and then saying, wow, we welcome this transition in their life? No. I mean, that's the thing that I just can't understand, is how you can take something that society says this is wrong. We literally have laws against it, and put it into the mind of a 7, 8, even 14-year-old kid. How can you ever think that that's okay? But then you see this, and I honestly think that Democrats are not wanting to talk about this as much because it's a losing issue for them. More parents are seeking out values-based education, and that goes from K-12 to college, because universities are now obviously completely off the wall. And so more parents are saying, you know what? I'm realizing that I invest in my child every single day, and I'm going to have to make a little bigger investment to get them into an education environment where they're not endangered, where they might actually come out and be able to function in society, instead of being told they're a victim, instead of being told that they are not who they think they are, that they don't know their own identity. I mean, this is what we're facing in our schools today, is whether or not we send a child there and get the same child back. I mean, I want my kid to learn history. I want my kid to learn math and how to read and write. I don't want my kid to come back and question everything about who they are.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with a little kid who believes in Santa or the Tooth Fairy, is it surprising that they would think that maybe they were born in the wrong body if that's introduced at 5 years old? And that's what's happening, and so once we really talk to the American people and we say, hey, listen, we need you to understand that there are classrooms in America where 5-year-olds are being told that just because they were born a boy with boy parts, body parts, doesn't mean that they're really a boy, that they're being told that maybe they were born in the wrong body. First of all, what an abusive thing to say to a child, that their body is somehow broken or wrong.
Right.
Right.
That is such a good point. Yes, it's twisted. Like, there's something wrong with you.
And Tudor, I was talking to some moms. I interviewed 4 moms whose kids had kind of gone through this gender confusion. And you've got a teenager, you've got a couple burgeoning. I've got 18, 16, 14, and 12. So I've got everybody right in the thick of it. There's a lot of stuff that happens when you're a teenager in life. And I've yet to meet the girl who's like, yay, puberty. It's so incredibly fun, right? Getting my period is so fun. It doesn't feel normal. You don't feel like you're, becoming a beautiful woman. You feel like, oh my gosh, this sucks. I don't, no, it's not fun, right? But in this time in your kid's life where there's like a lot of stuff happening that's normal, these kids are being told that their body is broken and is wrong. And one of the things that the mom said, Tudor, was that it's like this ultimate teenage rebellion, but the self-loathing that happens with the child, the way that they hate themselves and they want to change who they are, and it is so, and everyone around them is affirming that, right? It makes the child so unhappy and mean, and it breaks the whole family apart. And it was just heartbreaking to hear how these schools are having these conversations with kids, or their kids are on social media and seeing this stuff. And it is literally destroying the children's lives and the families too right now as the families fight back. And so, if anybody ever wants to find out more information, I don't know if you've ever had Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, on your show to talk about gender ideology. He's a guy from Canada, a dad. And I met him, Tudor, and he told me all of the members of parliament in Canada had voted to make it considered conversion therapy if you did not affirm your child's want to change.
Oh my goodness. What?
All of the members of parliament, it was a unanimous vote. And when I heard that a couple of years ago, I was like, well, it's my Kamala Harris moment. I was like, we have a very long border with Canada. That seems like a very important decision that's happening right to the north of us that could affect us. And, sure enough, look where we are right now. Would you ever think that these issues would have been part of a gubernatorial campaign that you had? No.
Right.
Or I think what you have to deal with as a mom.
I think what you said about self-loathing is so important, because I don't think people think of it that way. Because we've been told this is affirming, and that word, it doesn't jive with self-loathing, right? But that is truly what this is. This is telling a kid at the most vulnerable point of their life, there's a reason you hate yourself, and it's because you're not right. It's because you were built wrong. You are one of the unfortunate few who ended up in the wrong body, and you'll never be happy, and you'll probably kill yourself. I mean, that's what they're told.
And it's got to stop. We've got to stop it. And that was really the thing. If who's going to stop it? The government's not. We can't allow the government to draw the boundary. So it's going to be moms like us. It's going to have to be moms and dads that are going to redraw the boundary between school and home, that are going to set the expectations for what we want happening in public schools. And, Joy can say whatever she wants that night. But the truth of the matter is the majority of Americans that watch that exchange are with us. They do not think that this subject matter is appropriate for public school. They want kids to learn to read, write, and do math when they're at school. And currently that's not happening. And so we're just going to keep working to build Moms for Liberty. More chapters. We need more people to start chapters. So if you're listening to this, if I could, Tudor, just give the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Thank you. It's momsforliberty.org. Go to the website and click and see if you have a chapter in your county. We're set up by county chapters. And if we don't have one, click to start one and be this brave person that stands with a torch of liberty and says, join us. There is a difference between adults and kids, and we need to protect the future of children. And then, you've run for governor, now the real threat that this country is under. I think Americans are waking up to that more and more every day. We are in real danger of losing our country. Another Biden presidency to me looks like the destruction of all of if you thought that our institutions were captured now, just wait. Because I think a lot of things will be changed. And so, we just have to fight. We're the generation that knows that it doesn't have to be like this, and we need to fight for a better future.
I think we see that on so many levels with the country. When you talk about losing the country, we see it on so many levels. But when you're talking about our kids, we know they go after kids first. We know that they want to turn kids against parents. We've seen this historically. I mean, that's the beauty of actually learning history. You understand how it works, how they go in and they manipulate the most vulnerable, and those turn against the parents. And it's just a full disaster. And so we appreciate the fact that you are out there fighting every single day. And even in the face of all of these insults and the horrible things that the leftists are saying about Moms for Liberty, that you stand strong. Tiffany Justice, thank you for doing this. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting all of our moms across the country, Tudor. They're some of the bravest women I know.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com. You can subscribe right there or head over to the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us next time on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Have a blessed day.